The British scene has mostly been inspired by a fellow named Don Partridge. Don Partridge was quite big in England in the 60s, had a couple of top 5 hits. Rosie is the most famous of them. But he's hardly known over here in North America, and it's a real shame because he was a great artist. His early material is just fabulous. And he started out with the drums on his back, which is kind of the traditional European style. So you've got 2 ropes to your heels, and you walk basically, and the ropes pull on the pedals that operate the kick drum and the hi-hat, or whatever else you might mount up there, which can get pretty heavy, as many of the one-man bands attested to. And as most of them got older, the European style one-man bands, they switched to sitting down, Don Partridge included. People influenced by Don Partridge would include Chucklefoot, who's a very skiffle-oriented one-man band still going in England today. Slippery Mike, who moved from England to Germany and is still going to today. Vic Ellis, who a little more traditional in his style, but the stand-up approach, British stand-up approach. Vic Ellis plays a lot of concertina and accordion-based music. Buddy one-man band, have had the opportunity to meet Buddy. Buddy's a great guy, really good singer. Plays the stand-up style. He also does, when he's traveling, he plays tap shoes on a board, which is an interesting approach. Instead of having the drums, it's a lot easier to carry a board and tap shoes around with you than a bunch of drum equipment. He plays pan flute in a rack too. Beautiful little melodies on the pan flute, like Henry Thomas did back in the 20s. There's a whole scene of one-man bands up in Northern Europe. Kind of spent a lot of time in Norway and back and forth to, in the 80s, back and forth to Zurich. I don't know if they still do that, but Des Bader, one of the oldest one-man bands who's still alive, he's in his 70s. Gee Kettel helped a bit with the book too, contributed some writing and photos. Lawrence Glaister, Moti, and there's a beautiful documentary I made about them called Feel Free. I don't know how readily available it is. I think people have posted it on Facebook and things like that. Jimmy was another fellow I ran across who was a great deal of help. Jimmy is originally from the United States, but he lives in Australia now, and he spends a lot of time busking in Europe. And he was a great deal of help telling me about past one-man bands from the European scene that I hadn't heard of. And a lot of them are either dead or have left the scene. Otto and Barnelli, they're Germans originally transplanted to Italy, and they both play in the stand-up style, one on fiddle and the other on guitar, and they're very renowned in Italy. And speaking of Italians, a fellow that helped a great deal with the book was Mark Di Giuseppe, the Straniero, who has a really interesting setup, which is more than I can explain right now. But he plays a wide range of stuff, from classical music to reggae and rock and you name it, show tunes. And he wrote quite a bit of the Italian chapter and even other entries on other one-man bands. He's got a Facebook club called the One Man Band Club, which has also been helpful in the book research. Being a one-man band is pretty challenging. It's hard. It takes a lot of focus. It's very physical. You have to set up all your gear yourself, tear it all down yourself, move it all around. It's fun, of course, but it's not easy. And then you also have, like I said, the negative aspect of people looking down on one-man bands, so you're constantly trying to rise above that. The German one-man band scene is fairly big too. There's been a long history of stand-up one-man bands in Germany. I personally knew Buskin Chris quite well. Buskin Chris, he's still alive. He played drums on his back and banjo and harmonica. Very good songwriter. Very charismatic. Of course, I mentioned Slippery Mike. Rambo Chambo, another older stand-up one-man band out of Germany. Rambling Conrad. There's quite a few. Pit Pete. The European scene is actually quite large. People like Remy Bricka. Remy Bricka is one of the more famous French one-man bands. Plays the stand-up style. Uses elaborate kind of productions. Has fireworks and things like doves flying out. And does sort of a magic one-man band show. And I guess he was quite big on French television in his a number of years ago. Other one-man bands talked about him, people like Sebastopol and other French one-man bands. Paolo Sgallini, who was also quite helpful at times with the book.